I'm going to give you a quick tour of the camera's operating system and show you what most of this stuff does. Like I said, I left out menu for a reason. Now we press menu, we go up here. Now sometimes there's modes in the camera that there's other stuff here on the left hand side, but when I have it set to, that video mode, there's only 4, and we don't need to worry about those. There's a lot of these you're not going to need to worry about, stuff like photo style, filter settings, like I was saying earlier, camera filters, no effect. You can apply different effects, but usually I don't do that. Snap movie, never use, don't worry about it. Record format. Now, if you're trying to watch it on a television, like I said, remember earlier there's the HDMI and the AV out cable, you might want to record in that. Best reviewing on a PC, MP4. Like if you're going to be editing it, which most of you are, stick with MP4. Now the record quality, there are different ones here. The top one, like I said earlier, this camera shoots at 4K, so 4K 30, 4K 30 FPS. You can also do 4K 24 FPS, 1080p 60, doesn't do 4K 60 but it does 1080p 60, 1080p 30, or if you go down here, 720 30, or if you really don't have that big an SD card, you can do 480p 30, don't know why you would, but it's an option. Exposure mode. Remember those rings that I was talking about up here? Well, you can change the exposure on the camera according to what these different symbols mean up here. So remember when I told you earlier what they meant and what that meant for the exposure of the camera? You can just adjust which one sounds better to you. Do you want to have to do it manually? Do you want it to be determined by the shutter speed and stuff like that? You can do that. All this stuff here I have turned off because that would be an option you can pick, but I have it set to manual focus on the hardware level, so that's not an option for me. Now, continuous autofocus, it says it right here, focus is continuously adjusted during motion picture. I turn that off. Some cameras have great autofocus, like I said, G7 is not one of those. I always have it turned off. There's a lot of these settings that you don't really need to worry about. You can adjust wind noise canceller and mic levels. Wouldn't worry too much about these. When it comes to cancelling noise from the mic, you want to do that on a hardware level first with a windbreaker, for the mic. Don't worry too much about doing it on a software level. But you have the settings here to limit the the levels on the mic if you're maybe shooting indoors, for example. But that'll depend on what you're filming. If you're talking about doing clientele work or making films, I'll be pointing out the settings that you really need to concentrate on now. Perhaps in the future I'll go in-depth tutorial on what every single one of these settings do and what you should set for them, depending on what you're filming. But for now, I'm focusing on the main ones that you will need to get yourself started. FN button set. Remember earlier, I pointed out the 5 function buttons in the camera that you can set to do anything. That's how you set them. I don't personally use them because I haven't actually been in a situation where the buttons that I regularly use on the camera I have been able to reach, but that's how you set them if you are in a position like that. Eye sensor is basically, see how when I cover that, basically it turns off and projects this screen through there. You might want to turn it off though, because sometimes if you're filming and you have to get right up close to the camera, you can shut off the wee screen here and it can be quite annoying. Now this one here, shoot without lens, basically means you can actually, because some cameras stop you from recording if there's no lens attached. This basically allows you to record when the camera's like this. What will the camera see? Literally nothing, but it can be useful to test for stuff like dead pixels and that sort of thing, which on a mirrorless camera like this can sometimes be an issue, so you kind of want to look into that. Now into the main settings, really simple stuff here, stuff like setting your date and time, connecting to the Wi-Fi. This camera's Wi-Fi compatible, I've never used it for anything. You can change the live view mode, which is basically whenever you're watching through the lens of the camera, so you'll see on the screen but you're not recording. What do you see is the camera 60 FPS, is at 30, you can change that. It doesn't really have any bearing on the footage, but if you record in 60, probably set it to 60, I just leave it in 60 the whole time, and then when I'm recording it'll drop down to 30, whatever I'm doing. You can change a lot of settings here about this monitor itself, you know, how bright it is, etc. if you're trying to save on battery. And then USB mode down here, you can transfer footage from this camera to PC without even having to take the SD card out. You can just do it through the USB port. Now, sensor cleaning and pixel refresh is what you can use to try and fix the camera if there's problems with maybe dead pixels. That's pixel refresh can help, you know, fix that. And then if there's maybe dirt in the camera and you don't have one of the kits like I have, sensor cleaning can basically, it'll vibrate the camera sensor, which is that thing I said earlier to not touch, ever so slightly to try and shake the dust off. So if you're having trouble, you can use that. Format here is how you format everything on the SD card. Do that every time before you start the film. Now the last one here, the last list of settings, most of this stuff here is about playback whenever you're watching the footage you recorded. Don't worry too much about that at the moment. And now you know the basics of operating a mirrorless or DSLR camera. Great. So that was your brief look at the G7 and what every button on it does, and all these controls do. I hope if you're someone who wants to learn how to use cameras more, you find this valuable. I know there's probably a billion YouTube tutorials out there showing you how to use a camera, so if you happen to watch this one, thank you very much. So yeah, and if there's any other questions you have about using a camera, feel free to leave them on the, you know, down in the description. If there's any questions you have about any of my videos or anything you want to say, just put it down in the, I said description again, didn't I? I meant comment section. God. The last thing I'll say before I wrap this tutorial up is don't be afraid to ask questions that might be considered silly or stupid, alright? No one out there is perfect in anything, and if you're just starting out, it doesn't matter if the people around you know how to use the equipment, they know how to use the software, they're leaps and bounds ahead of you when it comes to doing the creative side of things. If there's something that you're not sure about, do not be afraid to ask anyone about them, because you'll never find out the proper answer. And then if you go on pretending like you already know, and then when it comes to actually doing the work, you'll screw it up, most likely, and then you'll look worse. Now that's one of the main reasons why for the first few episodes of this series are probably going to be on simple things, because the early episodes of this series are primarily going to be for those people out there that I hope are watching at the moment that don't have the answers on how to use a lot of the equipment and a lot of the software. They want to know how to use them, but they're maybe too afraid to ask questions because they might think people think they're, you know, silly or stupid. Because they're, you know, of course, if you're getting into film, you should know how to use a camera, you know, that type of thing. So that's what this series is for. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got something valuable from this episode, and I'll see you next Monday with our next tutorial.